A sudden spray of muddy water, a cruel laugh echoing from a luxurious car, and a young hotel cleaner left drenched, humbled, and invisible. Yet what remained unknown was that someone had witnessed it all. From that singular act of silent disdain, a quiet revolution began. This isn't a tale of vengeance. It's a narrative of rising with grace in a world determined to silence her. Dear viewer, what you are about to experience is more than just a story. It's a powerful affirmation of silent strength and the pursuit of fairness in overlooked places. If this is your first visit, I warmly invite you to share your location in the comments below. And if stories like this resonate with you, challenge your perspective, or spark thought, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon. We champion voices that deserve to be heard every day. Thank you for being here. Now let's delve into the narrative. The morning sky above Manhattan hung in a muted shade of gray, akin to a canvas awaiting its first brushstroke. The city stirred, half awake, oblivious to a profound injustice quietly and unexpectedly unfolding in a forgotten corner near Central Park West. Raina Thompson walked with her gaze downcast, her shoulders hunched against the crisp air. She wore a faded blue cleaning uniform, her hands tucked into its sleeves, clutching a small paper bag containing a wrapped sandwich and a pair of well-worn gloves. The sidewalk, slick from last night's rain, reflected the vacant city skyline in its puddles. Her shoes, 2 sizes too large and held together by sheer will and thread, squelched with each stride. But she didn't falter, she couldn't. Raina was already running late for her shift at the exclusive Grand Ledlow Hotel, and tardiness was a luxury she couldn't afford. Just as she reached the intersection where Fifth Avenue merged into the plaza, the stillness shattered. A sleek, black Mercedes, gleaming like a mirror, sped down the narrow lane without a hint of deceleration. It plunged through a shallow puddle, sending a high arc of muddy water directly onto Raina. It was instantaneous, cold, brown sludge splashed across her face, soaked her uniform and dissolved her paper bag, causing it to fall apart in her hands. Her sandwich disintegrated on the ground, her gloves floated in the dirty water, and she stood frozen, trembling from the shock. The car squealed to an indifferent stop just a few feet ahead. A tinted window lowered halfway, revealing a pale hand adorned with diamond rings and a wristwatch that could cover someone's year of rent. From behind oversized sunglasses, Bianca Rutherford smirked. "Well, darling, perhaps don't walk so close to the street next time," she uttered with a hollow chuckle. Her lipstick was flawless, her cruelty equally so. She rolled the window back up and drove away. Raina didn't scream, nor did she weep. Her lips parted for a moment, then sealed again. Her fingers trembled as she retrieved her gloves from the mud, wrung them out instinctively and continued walking. Her hair clung to her face, her shoes squeaked, but she didn't turn back. She couldn't. Across the street, from the second-floor window of a corner cafe, a man in a tailored charcoal coat slowly set down his coffee cup. His name was Marcus Weller, 38, African-American, and one of the most influential real estate investors on the East Coast. To the casual observer, he appeared to be just another sharp businessman on a morning break. But Marcus observed details. He had learned long ago that the most revealing moments in people's lives were never loud, they were silent. He had witnessed the splash. He had seen Bianca Rutherford's window descend. He recognized her instantly, the heir to the Rutherford family fortune, known for her high-end fashion boutiques and notorious for her contemptuous attitude toward anyone not clad in silk. Yet it wasn't Bianca who captivated Marcus's attention, it was Raina. The way she didn't curse, didn't pursue the car, didn't collapse. She simply composed herself and walked onward, as if she had endured this before, as if she understood life offered no pause button, even after public humiliation. Marcus pulled out his phone. "Get me her name," he said softly. "The girl in the Grand Ledlow uniform who just got splashed outside the cafe." His assistant on the other end was silent for a beat. "Yes, sir." That afternoon, Raina arrived at the service entrance of the Grand Ledlow Hotel, drenched to the bone. Her backup uniform was in her locker, and the wet one went directly into the utility sink. As she entered the linen closet to gather supplies, the stares began. Some coworkers shook their heads, others smirked. No one offered help. She moved through the hallways like a phantom, unseen unless it was convenient. Her supervisor, Mr. Lang, barely looked up from his clipboard. "You're late," he stated flatly. "I'm sorry I was." "Save it. VIP lounge needs detailing. And next time come dry. Reina nodded, pressing her lips together. Back in the cafe, Marcus prepared to leave. He didn't favor impulsive decisions, but something in his gut tugged at him. He had grown up watching his mother work triple shifts just to put food on the table, only to be overlooked by those she served with such dedication. The expression on Reina's face reminded him of his mother. Not the sadness, but the refusal to be broken. Before stepping out into the cold air, Marcus turned back for one last glance. A trail of muddy footprints faded into the crowd, but the memory of that moment, that girl's quiet dignity, clung to him like the echo of a dropped stone. Bianca Rutherford would continue her day blissfully unaware, but the splash she created wasn't just water. It was the dawn of a reckoning. Reina Thompson had no idea someone had seen her, but she would soon learn. The world is full of people who look away and a select few who don't. As the sun ascended over Charleston's cobblestone streets, Layla Monroe stood at the back entrance of the Ashbourne Grand Hotel, her shoulders squared despite the weariness in her bones. She had barely slept, haunted by the mud splash and the lingering laughter. Yet today she wore her backup uniform, pressed with as much pride as her heart could muster, her hair pulled into a neat bun, still fragrant with the lavender soap from the cheap bar she used sparingly. She stepped inside, greeted by silence. A few other cleaners nodded in passing, some with pity, others with veiled disdain. The murmur of her promotion to the VIP floor had already begun its circuit, bringing with it a slow trickle of resentment. But Isla didn't let it disrupt her rhythm. She clocked in, gathered her supplies and headed to the penthouse floor. The air smelled of jasmine and affluence. This floor was distinct. The carpets were plush, muffling her footsteps. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, reflecting a city vibrant with potential. Layla approached each task with the same reverence she once saw her mother apply to their modest apartment. Every corner mattered, every detail was sacred. Midway through polishing a crystal vase, she felt eyes on her. Turning slightly, she caught a glimpse of a man seated in a lounge chair near the piano. It was the same man who had inquired about directions the day before. Now he wore no disguise, just a serene expression and a gentle gaze. "Morning," he simply stated. "Good morning, sir," Isla replied swiftly, averting her eyes. "I never got your name yesterday," he said, rising slowly. "Isla," she responded, hesitant. "Isla Monroe." He extended a hand. "I'm Julian Crest." She paused, dustcloth in one hand, before shaking his hand. His grip was firm but not overbearing. There was something in the way he regarded her, not like a man observing an employee, but like a man recalling something long forgotten. "You remind me of someone I once knew," he said. "She worked hard like you. Made a life out of dust." Isla didn't know what to say, so she offered a faint smile and returned to her work. Julian didn't linger. He departed with a nod and a simple, "Take care, Miss Monroe." But something within Isla stirred, an awareness that this man was more than just a guest. Later that day, back in the locker room, Isla discovered a small envelope in her cubby. Inside was a simple note on thick paper. "You bring light to the shadows. Keep shining." No name, no explanation, but her fingers trembled as she held it. She thought of the previous day's mud, of Camilla Duval, Charleston's fashion queen, and her echoing laughter. That singular moment had stained her uniform but had somehow drawn someone powerful into her orbit. Julian Crest. The name wasn't unfamiliar. Isla remembered seeing it once on a business magazine her manager left in the break room. A real estate developer, billionaire philanthropist. She never connected the man on the cover to the one in casual clothes watching her clean. In another world, Camilla stood before a mirror, trying on a diamond choker for an upcoming gala. She tossed her hair back and admired the curve of her smile. "Is the tailor here yet?" she snapped at her assistant, Amelia. "Yes, ma'am, he's downstairs." Camilla rolled her eyes. "Tell him to wait. If he doesn't like it, he can find work elsewhere." But for all her poise and shine, something gnawed at her. That note, the photo, the sudden quiet from a few of her more influential friends. Her phone buzzed with alerts from gossip blogs. Some vague rumors, nothing concrete, but enough to irritate her polished armor. She opened her email and found an anonymous message. "Kindness builds kingdoms. Cruelty crumbles them." Camilla deleted it instantly, but her fingers trembled slightly. Back at the hotel, Isla was finishing her shift when her supervisor approached. You're being assigned to the Sapphire Lounge tomorrow, he said. VIP guests only. Do well. Isla nodded, wondering, another promotion or a test? That night, after putting her sister Ava to bed, Isla sat at the small kitchen table with a slice of toast and a half-empty jar of peanut butter. She opened her phone and typed Julian Crest into the search bar. Dozens of images appeared. Him at charity galas, groundbreaking ceremonies, ribbon cuttings. One quote stood out. The way a person treats the unseen is the truest test of character. Isla leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Was this man helping her out of pity, or did he truly see her? At dawn she arrived early at the Sapphire Lounge. The room was bathed in soft blue hues and floor-length curtains. She worked silently, ensuring every chair was aligned, every glass smudge-free. She was halfway through adjusting a centerpiece when a voice said, "Perfection." She turned. Julian stood there again, no cap, no sunglasses. "You keep showing up," she said softly. "So do you," he replied. They stood in silence for a moment. "I wanted to ask," he began carefully, "if you had other dreams. Bigger ones." Isla's throat tightened. "I did. I do," she said. "But life has a way of making you forget them." Julian nodded slowly. "I haven't forgotten. And I'd like to help you remember." The morning light streamed through the gauze curtains of the Sapphire Lounge, casting soft golden beams across the freshly polished floor. Layla Monroe stood silently by the window, her gloved hands resting gently on the edge of a mahogany table, watching the city gradually awaken. Charleston's rhythm was distant from this elevated floor. Here the world was hushed and meticulously arranged. But within Layla, a different kind of stir was beginning, a quiet unraveling of doubt, a new rhythm taking form. The previous day's interaction with Julian Crest had lingered, a warmth she wasn't sure she merited. When someone influential offers you the gift of being truly seen, it can be more challenging to accept than their money. It feels like a mirror held too close. But in Julian's gaze, Isla perceived no charity, no condescension, only genuine curiosity, an open invitation that dared her to step forward. Still she hesitated. She had spent her entire life surviving. When her mother passed and left her to care for Ava, survival became her sole language. Dreaming felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. But now those dreams whispered again, pulling at her in the stillness. As she moved through the lounge, she noticed a guest had left behind a tablet. She gently picked it up, intending to return it to reception, but something on the screen caught her eye. A paused video titled, "Voices That Build Empires." It featured Julian Crest. The still image showed him standing in front of a construction site, surrounded by workers, not in a suit but in rolled-up sleeves, dirt on his face, smiling as if he belonged there. Isla stared at it for a moment, then locked the tablet and set it aside. Later that afternoon, the staff room hummed with unusual energy. A new internal memo had been circulated. The hotel would be launching a professional development initiative, hospitality workshops, upskilling sessions, and the chance for cleaning staff to transition into managerial tracks. Whispers flew from locker to locker. "Did you hear? They're offering night classes." Apparently it was Mr. Crest's idea. First Monroe gets promoted, now this. Isla overheard it all but remained silent. She kept her head down but her heart pounded. Was this real? Could opportunity truly reach the overlooked corners of the hotel? After her shift, she found another envelope in her locker, this time containing an invitation to attend the first hospitality workshop. Her name was written in elegant cursive. There was no signature, just a line at the bottom. The brightest lights are often hidden under dust. Her hands trembled slightly as she tucked the envelope into her bag. She didn't know what future awaited, but something was clearly shifting, not just around her but within her. That evening at home she placed the envelope on the table. Ava was coloring beside her, a quiet hum in her voice as she focused on drawing a family of stick figures in front of a building. Isla looked closer. The building had large glass windows and flags at the top. It was the Ashbourne Grand. "Is that us?" Isla asked gently. Ava nodded, smiling. "That's you in the middle. You're the boss now." Isla laughed softly. "Not yet, honey. But you will be," Ava said with conviction. Isla turned away, swallowing a lump in her throat. Perhaps children could perceive what adults had forgotten to believe. The next day, Isla arrived at the workshop, held in one of the hotel's mid-level conference rooms. A modest spread of coffee and pastries sat to the side. Around her were 10 others, housekeeping staff, kitchen aides, bellhops, each carrying the same tentative hope in their eyes. At the front, a woman in a navy blazer introduced herself as Carla, the training director. "Your title does not define your talent," she began. For the next hour, Isla sat in a quiet daze, listening, absorbing. They spoke of guest experience, conflict resolution, time management. But beneath the technicalities was something deeper: belief. The belief that someone in her position could one day manage this hotel. When the session concluded, Carla handed Isla a pamphlet. "You asked a good question today," she said. "Have you ever considered applying for assistant guest services?" Isla blinked. "That's a management role." Carla smiled. "Yes, and you've already been managing more than you know." That evening, as she walked home beneath the dusky sky, Isla passed a high-end boutique. In the window stood a mannequin dressed in sleek silver fabric, almost identical to the outfit Camila Duval wore the day she splashed her. Isla stared at it for a moment. Her reflection in the glass showed her worn coat, her tired eyes, but also the quiet strength in her posture. Camila, meanwhile, sat at a rooftop party across town, surrounded by lights and superficial laughter. Her smile was practiced, but her heart wasn't in it. More whispers had reached her ears about the cleaner she splashed, about the rising star at the Ashbourne Grand, and Julian's name kept surfacing. "What's the big deal with her?" she asked her stylist bitterly. "People like stories," the woman replied, adjusting a pin in Camila's hair, "especially ones that feel like justice." Camila's jaw clenched. There's nothing noble about mopping floors. But deep down she knew the world had begun to shift, and not in her favor. Back at home, Isla tucked Ava into bed and gazed at the scholarship application she had begun drafting. She thought about everything that had happened in the last week. The splash, the silence, the small acts of kindness that had blossomed like flowers between concrete. She picked up her pen and began to write again. Somewhere in the city, Julian opened a folder labeled Monroe Isla. He scanned the notes, the workshop attendance, the feedback from her supervisors. Then he set the folder down and looked out over the city. "She's ready," he whispered. The winds were changing, carrying the whispers of transformation. The golden glow of morning filtered through the tall windows of the Ashbourne Grand. The VIP floor, usually hushed and cold with its opulence, seemed to hum softly that day, as if the very walls sensed a shift was imminent. Layla Monroe stood quietly in the guest services alcove, her hands clasped in front of her. She had ironed her uniform twice that morning. There was a letter in her pocket, an official offer for the assistant guest services manager position. But her hands trembled, not from nerves, but from the weight of everything that had preceded it. She hadn't told Ava yet. Somehow voicing it aloud made it more fragile, like a dream too brilliant for daylight. She would wait until it was tangible, until she could walk into the apartment and hand Ava the printed offer, watching her little sister's eyes widen. A gentle knock on the side panel broke her thoughts. Julian Crest stood in the hallway, no longer in disguise, but in a dark tailored suit, crisp and authoritative. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were kind. "Walk with me," he requested. Layla nodded, tucking the letter deeper into her coat pocket. They walked through the hallway in silence at first, past portraits of founders and donors, their gold-plated nameplates gleaming under chandelier light. Finally Julian spoke. "Do you know why I've been visiting this hotel more often lately?" She glanced at him, uncertain. "I assumed you had business." "I did," he said, "but not the kind most people would expect. I was looking for something, or someone, who reminded me what this business is about." He paused in front of a window overlooking the city. "When I was a child, my mother worked 3 jobs. She cleaned houses by day and washed dishes at night. And every Sunday she brought me to the park and reminded me that our value doesn't come from the floor we mop or the clothes we wear, but from how we treat others." Isla swallowed hard. She didn't want pity, but what she heard in Julian's voice wasn't pity. It was remembrance, respect. "She used to say," he continued, "one day someone will see your light. Until then, keep it burning." They stood in silence for a moment longer, until he turned to face her directly. "Isla, I've been watching, not in a strange way I hope, but because your light is exactly what this place needs." Her breath caught. "I've spoken to the board. Your promotion will be publicly announced at the end of week summit. She blinked. You're announcing it publicly? Julian nodded. No more silence. You deserve to be seen. At that very moment, in a starkly different part of the city, Camila Duval's world was beginning to fracture. Her latest campaign had flopped. One of her major sponsors had quietly pulled funding. The whispers were no longer whispers. They were echoing. In a fit of frustration, she opened her laptop and searched for herself. One of the top search results was a video clip titled, Cleaner's Grace, the Layla Monroe story. It was a stitched reel of security footage, employee interviews, and images of the VIP floor, all threaded with a quiet piano melody and Julian Crest's voice narrating parts of it. Camila watched in silence. The final frame showed the muddy splash in slow motion, frozen with a single line. Dignity when denied doesn't disappear. It rises. She slammed the laptop shut, her fingers trembling not from anger, but from something closer to fear. Back at Ashbourne Grand, the staff had begun to whisper too, but this time in awe, not doubt. That's her, one of the bellboys murmured, the one Julian Crest mentioned in his interview. She's going to run this place someday, another replied. Isla noticed it all, the way heads turned, the way eyes softened. But she walked with humility, carrying the same silent grace that had defined her from the start. That evening she found a gift bag resting on her desk. No card. Inside was a pair of brand new work shoes and a small silver pin in the shape of a phoenix. She smiled. She didn't need to know who had left it. The next morning, Isla entered the staff meeting room where all employees had gathered for the monthly address. Her name was called. She stood, unsure of what was expected. Julian stepped onto the small stage. This hotel has stood for tradition, excellence, and elegance. But it must also stand for growth, for fairness, and for recognition. He turned toward Isla. Today we recognize someone who began in the shadows but chose to shine anyway. Isla stepped forward slowly. As the staff applauded, she wasn't sure if her feet were even touching the ground. When she accepted the microphone, she didn't read from the paper she'd prepared. I used to believe being invisible kept me safe, she began. That if I just did my job and stayed quiet, no one would hurt me. But now I know being seen doesn't make you weaker. It reminds you that you matter. The room was silent. Thank you, she said simply. To those who saw me and to those who tried not to, I hope one day you'll see the people around you too. Julian stood with his hands folded, pride in his eyes. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was steady, reverent. The kind that doesn't come from spectacle but from truth. Isla walked off the stage not as a cleaner or a manager, but as something more. A symbol of quiet revolution, of dignity that rises despite every attempt to drown it. And this was only the beginning. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the Ashbourne Grand, casting warm streaks of light onto the marble floors that Layla Monroe now traversed, not with hesitation but with quiet assurance. The uniform she wore still bore the emblem of housekeeping, but her steps had transformed, lighter, firmer, more grounded in her sense of self than ever before. The scars of what had transpired, that dreadful splash, the sneering laugh, the lonely glances, were not erased, but they had faded, not into oblivion but into lessons carefully folded into her soul. She had not merely endured, she had transcended. Outside the hotel cafe, Isla sat at a small table during her break, a steaming cup of chamomile in her hands. She observed the city breathe, the swirl of lives and ambitions rushing past the tall glass windows. This city, which had so often consumed people like her whole, now regarded her with respect, not because she demanded it, but because she had insisted, through her quiet consistency, that she deserved it. Julian Crest had remained a consistent presence, not overbearing, never interfering but always nearby, always aware. An unspoken rhythm existed between them now. Moments of mutual understanding passed through small glances, brief smiles, the kind of connection that doesn't require noise to be felt. He saw her one afternoon kneeling beside a flower bed at the hotel's rooftop garden, her hands in the soil, her sleeves rolled up. She looked up when he approached. "You're always tending something," Julian said gently. Isla nodded. "Life only grows if someone cares enough to nurture it." He crouched beside her. "And yet you've bloomed without anyone's help." She glanced at him, eyes calm. "That's not true. I had help, just not the kind most people notice." He understood. Her help had come in small, often invisible ways. A warm sandwich, a clean pair of gloves, a kind word spoken when the world was silent. And now her light had begun to illuminate others. In the following weeks, Isla had started a quiet initiative she called the Dignity Cart. A simple rolling shelf in the staff lounge filled with new gloves, socks, protein bars, and small notes that read, "You are seen." No one ever saw her refill it, but everyone knew it was her. Her coworkers began changing. The whispers grew quieter, the sidelong glances softened. Even Tina, recently reinstated, stopped her one day and handed her a folded note that simply said, "Thank you for not becoming what they tried to make you." At home, Ava's drawings were pinned across their fridge. Figures of her and Isla standing atop a glittery hotel, stars above their heads. One figure had a mop in her hand and a crown on her head. That evening, Julian called her outside after her shift. They stood on the same street where her story began, where tires had flung mud and laughter had scarred. "I've been thinking," he said. "This city remembers power, but it rarely remembers grace." She stayed quiet. "I want to change that," he continued, "not just with promotions or press, but with presence, with people like you leading from the ground up." Isla smiled gently. "Not everyone's ready to see people like me in rooms like that." Julian looked directly at her then. "Then let's build new rooms." And in that moment, Isla realized that her story wasn't a Cinderella tale. It wasn't about being saved. It was about rising with dignity when no one offered a hand, about building something enduring with bare hands and a resolute heart. She had walked through mud, yes, but she had carried grace with her every step of the way. And now that grace was transforming everything it touched. Layla Monroe's story didn't begin with applause or grand recognition, but with a cold splash of muddy water on a forgotten sidewalk. In Ashbourne, she was just a cleaner in her early 20s, with worn shoes and quiet determination, striving to hold her life together while caring for her younger sister, Ava. That morning, when a wealthy woman in a luxury car laughed after humiliating her with a careless splash, Isla didn't scream or retaliate. She simply picked up her soaked bag and continued onward. What she didn't know was that someone was observing. A quiet billionaire named Julian Crest, whose eyes saw not just profit margins but people. What unfolded afterward was not a fairy tale but a journey of resilience, integrity, and unspoken strength. Isla continued working with humility and grace, never seeking pity or favors. She endured gossip, sabotage, and doubt. Yet each day she showed up. She smiled at strangers. She cleaned with meticulous care. She didn't fight to be noticed, she simply refused to vanish. Julian, moved by her quiet courage, began to intervene, not with fanfare but with intention. He helped from the shadows at first, offering new gloves, warm meals, and a transfer to better working conditions. Then he ensured the truth came out when she was wrongly accused. When the hotel staff began to pay more attention to her, not everyone celebrated. Some resented her. But Layla's strength wasn't in confronting them. It was in not becoming them. The culmination of her transformation wasn't just a scholarship or a promotion. It was the moment she stood in a room full of people who had once overlooked her and earned not just applause but profound respect. Isla didn't need rescuing. She needed someone to believe that her presence mattered. And when Julian finally stepped into the light, not as a savior but as a partner in her growth, it wasn't the beginning of a love story. It was the continuation of one woman's ascent into her own illumination. What can we glean from Layla's journey? First, that grace under pressure is power. Not the kind that demands attention but the kind that endures. In a world where outrage often dominates, quiet dignity is revolutionary. Second, that opportunity shouldn't exclusively go to those who loudly demand it. Sometimes, those who need it most are too preoccupied with survival to ask. And finally, that kindness, when it is consistent, sincere, and given without expectation, can irrevocably change someone's life. Layla's story reminds us that we don't always get to dictate how the world perceives us, but we can choose how we conduct ourselves through it. Whether you're a hotel cleaner, a CEO, or someone caught between aspirations and obligations, your worth isn't defined by your title. It's defined by how you treat others when no one is watching, and how you persist even when no one is cheering. If her journey moved you, inspired you, or made you pause to reflect, then we invite you to support the telling of more stories like hers. Stories that illuminate resilience, challenge injustice, and prove that character always outweighs status. Subscribe to our channel and become part of a growing community that values humanity, dignity, and hope. Every click, every share helps us continue sharing powerful, emotional, and true-to-life stories that deserve to be heard. Let's keep elevating voices like Layla's because the world needs to hear them. Thank you for watching.